I forgot to turn my microphone on again. Hello, do you struggle with FOMO? I asked sort of a variation of this question yesterday, both in this group and on my personal page, and I found the answers to it really intriguing because there was a possible correlation. Obviously, it was a very informal poll, so not like scientific or anything. But I thought it was really interesting that the people who said that they struggled with the fear of missing out tended to be extroverts. So I'm really curious if that's true across the board. If you feel like you struggle with FOMO, let me know in the comments. Well, let me know whether you do or not, and then let me know like whether you're introverted or extroverted, if how you consider yourself, because I'm really curious if this is like an across the board kind of thing or just was sort of a fluke. But I found that really, really interesting. So as you're joining on, please say hello. Let me know that you're watching. If you're watching on the replay, please let me know that you're watching on the replay. I love getting your comments, whether they are live or on the replay. I know a lot of people can't join us live, so please comment anyway. I want to know that you're there. If you're live, comment as well. So I'm just going to go ahead and dive in on this topic. I think it's a very relevant topic with the way social media works and just kind of sucks us back in. And a lot of it comes because of this fear of missing out on what other people are doing, right? We want to know what's new. We want to know what other people are up to. We're afraid that we'll miss something cool and interesting if we don't check in on our social media, like obsessively, right? It's kind of compulsive sometimes. So I wanted to talk about this really great shift, like in the way that we view FOMO, that I came across in a Reddit post. And I just wanted to share with you this perspective, because I think if you take this shift in perspective, it will really change the way you look at your time, the way that you spend your time, and how you feel about the time that you're spending. So I'm going to go ahead and jump in. Hey, Rachel, thanks for saying hi. I've got someone who's a Facebook user. I don't know who it is because the tool I'm using to go live doesn't always show me names, but hello. And thank you for saying hello. And thank you for joining in live. So I'm going to just go to this post that I found on Reddit and just share with you some of the higher level ideas, some of the stuff that he shared here that I thought was just a really great shift in perspective. And then after we talk about that, I'm going to share with you also some questions I found that are really helpful for kind of helping to shift your perspective if you find that you are experiencing some kind of FOMO while you're on social media. So we'll get into that after we talk about this mindset shift. Okay, so this person, I'm going to assume that it's a guy because he talks about gaming, and I know like girls can be gamers too, but I think it tends to be more of a guy thing. I don't know. I'm just going to say he because it's simpler. So hope that doesn't offend anybody. So this person says for the majority of his life, he made a big mistake of undervaluing how precious his time was, the time that he had here on Earth. And I mean, it's really true when we think about it, right? Like we have what, at the most, maybe, 90 years is old, right? 100 is like really old. So we have maybe 100 years at the most, probably something more like 80, maybe 90 years. And I think the older that I get, I know I'm not old yet, but I mean, I'm 35. So the older that I get, the more that I realize how short time really is. I mean, I've got, my 4-year-old son who I'm sure to him, it feels like time just takes forever, right? My husband found a statistic that said something like, I want to say it was like the first 6 years of your life, as far as how that time feels to you, it feels like it's like half of your life experience, which is crazy, right? Like the first 6 years of your life is like half of what your life feels like. And then as you get older, like it goes faster and faster and faster, right? How many other people have experienced this? Like the older you get, the more you realize like how little time you have and how much time it takes to really invest in something that's important to you, into something that you want to accomplish in the world. So I think this is a really important point, that we not undervalue how precious the time is that we have, because there is so little of it. So he says he undervalued the precious nature of the time he'd been given to live here on this earth, and had overvalued the short-term gratification that comes from digital pleasure, digital distraction. So he talks about how middle school, he spent his whole life playing World of Warcraft. In high school, he spent all of his time playing Call of Duty. And then, of course, that was when social media sites started. So then in college, he was spending loads of time on social media, which I'm sure we can all relate to, right? And he talks about how, like, through those 3 phases of his life, that basically added up to 300 days, which is really a lot of time if you think about it. And then he talks about how, like, if you're looking at just your phone for just an hour a day, that makes up 22 days in a year. Like, just 1 hour of scrolling your phone, that's 22 days every single year that you're spending on your phone. So it's really, like, if you think about it in terms of, you know, the time that you're spending, it's kind of a mind-blowing almost, right? And so he says, at the end, you have nothing to show for it, in the same way that he has nothing to show for all the hours that he invested into gaming and social media. So what this calls us to do, what this perspective kind of emphasizes for us, is that our time is not free. Every time we make a decision, we have to consider the implications of that decision. What is the opportunity cost? Like, what are we missing out on when we decide to give into our FOMO of what we're missing out on social media? What else are we missing out on in our real lives? Every hour that we spend scrolling social media is an hour that we're missing out, like learning a new skill, or spending time with the people who matter most to us, or you know, starting a business, whatever it is that's important to you about how you spend that time. That is something that you're missing out on every time that you waste time online, you know, watching other people. Now, obviously, I'm not saying like social media is this terrible, evil thing. I mean, that's obvious, right? Like, I'm talking to you here on Facebook. And I think that there is definitely a wonderful place for social media and all of the other great resources that we have on the internet. But the point is that we think about how we are spending that time. Are we spending that time truly connecting with people, or are we spending that time, you know, wishing we were living somebody else's life? Are we spending that time learning how to do something new, or are we spending that time, you know, wasting time watching cat videos or something like that? Does anyone watch cat videos? I know that's like the joke that everybody gets on the internet, to waste time watching cat videos, but I don't know. Is that a thing people really do? Probably is. I have watched a couple of cat videos in my life. Sorry, that was kind of a random rabbit trail. So that's the point that he drives home here, is that the real FOMO, the real thing we should be afraid of missing out on, is making choices that lead us to missing out on what our lives could have been like. And I really like this last quote from this post on Reddit. He says, "Scrolling through feeds is not free. It comes at the expense of the best version of you." So I think this mindset shift is a really helpful thing to think about, a helpful like perspective to take if you really start to think about, and I know we've talked about this in here before, thinking about like, what would you rather be doing? Why are you trying to develop a more intentional relationship with technology? What would you rather be filling that time with? Is it, you know, learning to cook? Is it like learning to speak a new language? Is it spending more time, you know, reading to your kids? Is it like finally starting the business you've been dreaming about starting for however long? So I think like it's good to think about that before we ever let me think. What is that quote? It's like, the failure to plan is planning to fail. I think that's how it goes. So if we're not planning ahead, thinking, when I find myself wasting time on social media, I'm going to remind myself that what I'd really like to be doing is fill in the blank. So if we're thinking ahead before we find ourselves in that situation, I think we're going to be in a much better position to like resist the FOMO, if you will. So let me know if that shift was helpful to you, if you feel like that's a really good, like helpful shift in perspective for approaching the fear of missing out and kind of turning that into the what I alluded to or mentioned yesterday in this sort of poll that I did, the joy of missing out, or I guess you say JOMO. I don't know. I've never really heard anybody say it out loud before. But like finding joy in taking part in your real life and not just scrolling social media or whatever it is that sucks you in. So then I wanted to also share with you quickly, how long have I been on here? I can't even see. Oh, 10 minutes. Okay, that's not bad. So I wanted to share with you quickly these questions. Let me pull up the file that I wrote them on. Okay, I found these actually on, are you guys familiar with the site, The Art of Manliness? Let me know if you're familiar with that site. So it's actually a little bit ironic, I guess, that that's where I got it from, since I think all but one person in this group is female, but whatever. We'll learn to be manly today, right? And honestly, this is not something that just applies to men. So I'm going to pull up my little banners here. Okay, so these are the 4 questions that if you're like on the internet or whatever, you're on Instagram, Facebook, whatever, and you come across something that makes you think, oh man, I really wish that was something I had or something that I was doing. I mean, that's a form of FOMO, right? To wish that you had what someone else had. And these, someone's laughing at my manliness comment, I think. So these are some questions that are really helpful to help you assess like whether that FOMO is quote unquote appropriate or not, and to kind of help you reframe your thinking. So the first question is this something I really wish I were doing? So like sometimes, let's say, you're at home, like maybe it's movie night or something. You're going to watch a movie and you're going to eat pizza or whatever. And then you see someone else's post on Instagram about how they're like spending Friday night at a party or whatever. And you're like, man, I really wish I was at that party. But maybe that's not really true. Maybe you really do wish that you were at home eating pizza, watching a movie. And what this post you see is actually a reminder of is the fact that other people make different decisions than you do. And you know what? That's totally okay. Like everybody makes different decisions and we all live different lives. But sometimes seeing those other decisions, those other choices that people make can make us realize like the fact that there are other decisions to make, right? And kind of makes us doubt our own decisions. Does that make sense? It's like, oh, other people do things differently than I do. Maybe I should be doing things differently too. So it's important to assess whether it's something you like really do wish that you were doing right now, or whether it's just that awareness that other people make different decisions. The second question is, if it's not just like a doubt of your own decision making, is it actually a feeling that is telling you that something in your life needs to change? Maybe there is something about your current life choices that you're truly not happy about, and it is something that you need to change. Johnny, please don't do that. It may not be that specific choice, like what you're specifically seeing that other person doing, but maybe it's something like similar in your life. Like maybe you're seeing someone posting their pictures of them in like Costa Rica, and you really don't want to travel to Costa Rica, but what you really want, like that change that you are, you're really seeking out, is to have more adventure in your life. Like you're tired of just sitting at home, or like, maybe you still live with your parents and you're like ready for the adventure of moving out into your own house, something like that. I don't know. I don't know what it is, but that is something useful to think about when you experience FOMO. Is there something in my life that needs to change? And then just start thinking seriously about how to create that change in your life. The third question is this something Can you guys hear my son? He's making a lot of noise with his train right now. I apologize if that is distracting to you. So the third question is this something that is viable for me right now? So if you realize that this is something that you do wish you were doing, maybe it's not the best or the right time for you. So there are seasons in our life, right? So there are things that I did when I didn't have kids and didn't have to worry about taking care of somebody else that I don't do now that I don't have kids, because they are a primary focus for me. And so it's a good idea to, when we see something that someone else is doing, to remind ourselves that that's for their season of life. I'm in a different season of life. Maybe this is something I'll come back to in the future. Maybe it's not, but that's okay, because there are seasons in life. So this is an interesting little tidbit about me. So I tend to have this brain that's like always thinking of new ideas and like always excited about new things and like all of these different things that I want to do. And like that can be a little bit overwhelming sometimes. But the thing that makes it really difficult is that I have this sort of sense that like now is all I have. And if I don't act on this great new idea right now, then I'll never get to. And that's a form of FOMO, right? Like I'm afraid I'm going to miss out on ever getting to do this great idea that I have. And so one thing that I'm having to like learn for myself is, sorry, every time I move my mouse, this stupid screen pops over somewhere. It's really annoying me. So what I'm having to realize for myself is that I know we just talked about like how valuable our time is and like how little time we truly have, but I'm also having to learn to kind of like step back from that idea a little bit and to realize that I probably have more time than I realize, and that like it's not just today. Like I've got to focus on this one idea that I have and see this idea out to completion before I try to do something else, or else I'll be constantly spinning my wheels. I'll be constantly switching from one thing to another and never actually focusing and getting one thing done. I don't know if any of you guys can relate to that feeling of like, if I don't do it now, I'll never get to do it. But that's where that question of, is this something that is viable for me right now, comes in. You have to seriously ask yourself whether it truly makes sense for you to be doing whatever this other thing is right now. And then the final question is, and in a way, I think this could have been the first question, like the most important question is this an accurate representation of reality? Okay, I think we all know that what we see on television, what we see on social media is like the curated version of a person's life, right? It's like only the good things or only the exciting things. And I'm not even talking about like not talking about bad things on social media. I'm talking about like just not even talking about the mundane things. Like you may see someone enjoying a beautiful supper or whatever. And what you don't see is like the hour that they spent in traffic coming home from work that night. So we have to really ask ourselves, like, I see them doing this wonderful thing and my life is so boring. Like, why don't I ever get to do anything interesting? When in reality, there is plenty in their lives that is just as boring as the stuff that's in your life. And that is, where that quote I posted this morning comes in. I don't know how many of you saw it. I think several of you did. But Stephen Furtick said, never compare your behind the scenes, so like the mess, the everyday of your life, with everyone else's highlight reel. They're showing you the best version of what's going on in their lives. Even me, like I try to be transparent. I try to be authentic and like share, the real stuff that's going on. But I usually try to put a positive or funny spin on things. And that's partly because that's just like how I try to look at life. Like I try not to let myself get way down under all the bad stuff, but like I try to make it like positive or even funny so people will laugh. But like, that's me curating, right? That's me like sharing the bad stuff, but sharing it in such a way that you might think it's actually not as bad as it feels to me. So some good questions to keep in mind if you find yourself experiencing that fear of missing out. Is this something I really wish I were doing? Is the feeling telling me something I need to change? Is this something that is viable for me right now? And is this an accurate representation of reality? I would love to know what you guys think of like these questions and of the mindset shift, how you feel like it can apply in your own life. Let me know. I love getting your comments, and I don't know. I want to be able to give you guys like transcripts or something, because I know a lot of you struggle with having the time to watch the video. So I'm going to see what I can do about that. But in the meantime, I wanted to remind you that in 2 weeks, we're doing the email decluttering challenge. So if you haven't signed up for that, make sure that you have. We are going to be talking about some mindset shifts there as well. In the comments on one of my posts yesterday, I think it was, one of the members in here mentioned how she gets FOMO from like her email inbox, like feeling like she's got to sign up for all of these mailing lists, right? Because, they might have something interesting to tell me. And so that's something that we're going to talk about, kind of how to deal with that over the course of the email decluttering challenge, the inbox zero challenge. So if you're not signed up for it, please do, so that you can get like the information about what's going on in the challenge. I think that's all I have for you guys today. So I hope this was helpful for you. I hope that you feel like you can kind of better overcome your FOMO now, and experience a little more JOMO, the joy of missing out. And I hope you all have a great week. I will talk to you all later. Bye-bye.